You ever been diagnosed with anything officially?
No.
So what mental illness do you
I think I have anxiety for the most part. I've had depression before, but it wasn't ever, I guess, debilitating enough to go. I think that's all I can remember.
Okay. Can you tell me about the anxiety? What does that feel like?
I guess some people might call it as worrying. Like sometimes my brain does not shut off for worrying about the stuff I have anxiety about. So it's just constant. It's a constant thought process.
What kind of things do you worry about?
The normal stuff, kids, life in general, husbands, money.
Which one would you say is the worst for you?
Being a good mom and daughter are the worst. Anxiety.
Do you feel like there is a reason or a root cause of you feeling inadequate?
I would assume both my parents were kind of absent in the emotional part. My mom did a really good job. I don't ever remember being hungry, or we were never homeless, but emotionally I believe that she was absent, and then my dad wasn't there for really anything, so absent.
How do you feel like that affects you as a parent now?
In some ways good, because I want to be a better parent than what I had. In some ways, if you probably ask my kids, I am too much. Like, not exactly a helicopter mom, but I'm in some kind of vehicle.
Can you tell me more about your childhood?
It was me and my older sister for the most part. My mom always had to work 1 or 2 jobs to make ends meet. So there was a lot of times when it was my older sister and I only, and she's the one who got me up for school because my mom was either already at work or getting ready for work. So it was just her and I for the most part. And then as we got older, it was more my mom was an alcoholic, and that's what she chose to do other than parent. So it was just me and my older sister, and if you don't have that, I think that it draws away from, my sister was a kid, so she had no real clue on how to parent, how that works. And then my dad was the weekend dad, summer dad. So it's always good, but my good memories aren't necessarily about him, but the farm. We have a family farm, and so I remember that being the most pleasant thing. So it was kind of fend for yourself. Which, I don't know. I think now it wasn't as bad as other people, so. But the not having a parent there. And then as I got older, of course, it was my mom. She had a different husband and some more children, and she didn't really, I guess, want to parent them either, so it fell a lot onto me when my older sister wasn't there, and then after a while, it was just me. And that's hard because I wasn't, 14, you're not ready to be a parent, but you do parenty stuff.
So how has that changed your relationship with your siblings, your older sister or your younger siblings?
I think me and my older sister have a weird kind of connection. She tells, like maybe I can't do anything wrong, even though I know that I'm human and that's possible. But she seems to think that maybe nobody can say anything bad about me, which is, not true. I am human and I have faults. So, but it's drawn us closer, but I'm not sure it's always healthy. And that, I wish that we could just be sisters instead of having that. She's kind of like my mom, but she's not. And then I know the feeling because my little brother and sister are 12 years younger than I am, and I felt until they were 17 or 18 that they were my children. Like I have that. I worried about them. I was mad for them. I was not just in a sisterly way. Like when they graduated, I wanted to be the mom, and that's not how that's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be the sister. And so it was kind of like don't want to say it was a replacement, but that's not my job. And so it was a little, not knowing then, but being a parent to your own children, you know that that's not right. They're supposed to be siblings and not your children. So it was hard and I guess stressful.
You say that your dad wasn't there a lot. Do you feel like that has affected the outcome of your life now?
Well, yeah. Dads are supposed to be there, just like moms. They have a different purpose, but they're supposed to be there. And he was busy. I always felt, much like my mom, like I was alone in the wanting of that relationship. Things are different now. We've talked and had an understanding that, you know, things should have been much different. It makes it harder because for me, it's an emotional hardness, not so much that he wasn't physically there, just emotional. You know, your dad's supposed to kiss your boo-boos and do stuff like that. So whenever they're not there emotionally, it makes you feel less than inadequate. Like there wasn't enough of you to be important to him, or my mom for that matter. But for some reason, I felt it more, probably because I didn't live with him, that I was replaceable, that I wasn't important.
Did those feelings that you felt from your dad and your mom, from the lack of their, or the absence from your life, do you feel like that affected other relationships in your life?
Oh yeah, I always feel like I'm not worthy enough for many things. I'm not a good sister. I'm not a good mama. I'm not a good wife. I mean, I'm not a good daughter, even though those people who help create that feeling, I feel bad that I'm not whatever they needed. And I know it's not quite how it should be.
Have you went to any therapy or tried to get to the root of this issue?
I did go to therapy. We talked more about my father issues than anything, because I initially went to therapy for, I was dating people that were all wrong. And I got scared because they were the kind of people you wouldn't want to bring home to your kids, but I was doing that. And I knew that wasn't right, because that's, you know, if you don't want your daughter dating them, why would you date them? And essentially it came out to, you know, my parents will always, that's their job. I can't make them be parents. I have to be the daughter. And that was really hard because I wanted to repair things. Like maybe if I did things different, said different things, did different things, that they would all of a sudden be all parenty, like loving. And I'm not saying they don't love me, but they even currently don't give me the love that I need. And I could request it, maybe. I just don't think that I'm not sure that would help me.
Do you feel like having a conversation with them about any of these things would change the dynamic of your relationship?
I've had conversations in the past with both parents. I think the one that bothers me more is my relationship with my mom. And I think the reason why she wouldn't maybe respond the way I want to is because she cannot. I would want her to maybe admit or at least try to understand where I'm coming from. And I don't think that she's able to do that. And my dad, we have had also conversations, and he's apologized for the things that he knows that he's done. But what if that maybe it was a little too late to have that really close dad and daughter relationship, but we still are communicative. You know, he's made efforts, so I feel, I guess, more comfortable talking to him about that stuff anyways.
Why do you think that your mom can't understand
She
from your
doesn't have
perspective?
tools. She wasn't raised well either, and her mom wasn't raised well. I just recently kind of came to that conclusion within the last year and a half. I used to be very angry at my mom, but realizing that if you don't have the tools, you don't know how to do it yourself. If you never acknowledge that you need the tools or you need help, it's going to be difficult. if it's difficult for you, it might be hard to do. And that's really helped me within the last, I'm going to say, year, understanding why it might be difficult for her to come maybe to me or to just our relationship in that way where it would benefit us both. But
if thinking about all the tools and all the skills that you've learned to help you with your anxiety and your relationships, if you could share one with your mom or your dad, which one do you think would be beneficial?
I'm going to say face it head on. It's going to hurt. It's going to be hard. Because it's hurt, it hurts thinking about what I may have been or still currently doing to my own children that's not productive and so whenever you know that you've hurt your kids in one way or the other, I think it's really hard to come to terms with that. So if they just recognized it and maybe spoke it out loud, it would just release a lot of maybe their, pent up anxiety or feeling bad about themselves.
What?
Because really, they can't do anything about it now anyway. But they can acknowledge it and practice hopeful things now.
So do you think it is helpful to learn new skills even though you know you've already done things in your past to hurt somebody or to hurt yourself?
Yes, you can always apologize. That's a lot of, if you can acknowledge the stuff that you did, even though you didn't have the knowledge, the education, even the power to do it, the mental capacity, whatever would make you not want to feel it and say anything about it. I think if you have that, you would already be 50% better, and then you can just go on. If you wanted to repair it, you could somehow. Because all kids, I think that even though I'm 46, I would still be maybe on tiptoes waiting for it to happen. Or I don't know if tiptoes is the right word, but I would welcome it. I might be skeptical at first, but I would welcome it.
Can you tell me what, you said you were depressed at one point in your life. Can you tell me what that felt like?
I think it's happened all throughout my life, just in little snippets. I've never been clinically depressed. I've never, besides postpartum depression, that was handled with medication, and soon after I was off medication. But the feeling of worthlessness was big in high school. I had all these big emotions anyways, from maturity, puberty, and then to have a mom who was not very helpful in those feelings anyways, and then creating feelings of her own. I felt like I wasn't doing enough, wasn't good enough, which kind of like, what can you do? And so that led me just to, I never thought about hurting myself or harming myself, but just that it would just be better maybe if I disappeared, which I guess is a way of harming. But I never wished myself dead, but I felt just low. And then in my first marriage, I also felt low because equal partners, but I was doing stuff that wasn't conducive to a good marriage. And even now, there are some days whenever I feel like it's still the same thing. It's not as low or as a depressed feeling now. It's more of a, what do I need to do to get out of that slump or the downhill of whatever it is. But just feelings of inadequacy brought on feelings of depression.
So you say you still feel those things now, sometimes. If you could change one of the feelings, anxiety or depression, which one do you feel is the heaviest? Which one would you want to change the most?
Anxiety. I very rarely feel down to where that word depression would come out. I'm pretty optimistic about most things. Anxiety about being good enough for whatever task, whether that's parenting, being a wife, being a sister, being a mom, just being a human. I think that gives me more anxiety than depression. It's heavier or more present.
What do you think would help ease your anxiety? About what would make you feel worthy?
Oh, feel worthy. That's a big question. I would assume counseling, maybe some kind of therapy, because the people that I choose to have in my life now would never, unless kids innocently, but would never intentionally make me feel unworthy. That's something I do all on my own. So I would assume getting more therapy or counseling would help me more. I have been looking at my spirituality, thinking that might be helpful, and it could be. I'm just not at a point where it is therapeutic yet.
So why do you think that you still feel unworthy even though you surround yourself with people who do not show you that you are unworthy?
I think it's a long-term effect of how I interpreted things when I was younger. My mom was very critical about certain things, maybe about the way I looked, the way I acted, and those carried over to the reason my dad did not love me was a lot about how I looked and just stuff like that. And so how I interpreted things that they did or said, I'm not saying that they were right or wrong, but I interpret them as all negative. Like when my dad couldn't or chose not to see me, I thought that was because he didn't love me, he didn't like me as a person. And when my mom chose to point out things that I thought were negative, not necessarily that they were or they weren't, I can't speak for her, but I took that as an intentional trying to hurt me, and no matter what I did, it was there. And so I don't. What's the original question? How would I go? Would I go back? I think.
What do you think? Why do you think that you still feel that you're unworthy?
I think it's an old hurt. An old hurt.
So would you say that sometimes we cause ourselves to be depressed or anxious because we are misunderstanding what other people are saying to us?
Yes, and I think that's a young kid thing. It's a person thing. It's how someone could say something to the same person, or two different people the exact same way, and each person will get something different out of it. I just think growing up, I took things. I was maybe a nervous child. I didn't want to do things wrong. I've always followed the rules, and so whenever you do everything you can just to follow the rules, that and parents are still not happy. And those are the only ones you remember. Maybe other people had said something negative to me, but the ones you remember are the people who are supposed to love you. And those are the ones, the hurts that stay with you, whether they meant to hurt you or not.
So do you think that there's a skill that you could have learned, that someone could have taught you as a child, that would have prevented you from feeling unworthy because of your misconception of the way somebody else's behavior was displayed?
I'm sure there is, but as an adult, I'm not sure what that would be. I think I know what I try to do for my own children, just because that's what I thought, or I think that I missed as a child, but I don't know, because we all have read books and stories about what is supposed to happen in a loving relationship between you and your parents. There's no denying that, but I don't know what could have been said or done differently, except being done differently too. And I might have not even taken that well. It could have been my own personality that just really took things to the wrong way. I would like to think it would have been an easy fix, but I don't know.
So do you think maybe if you would have had better communication skills as a child, like if your parents would have communicated better with you, that you would have been able to communicate your feelings? For example, if your mom or dad said something that made you feel a certain way, do you think that if you would have had better communication skills, if you would have learned those as a kid, you could have felt safe enough to have that conversation with them so that you weren't internalizing the wrong information?
I hope so. We I think as adults, we think about what could have been done differently, good or bad, and I think that's, I wouldn't be able to say what they could have said or how often, but I'm sure that would have made it easier, at least to get clarification. I think that kids are smart and that they take cues very well from their parents, whether negative or positive. It was a time where children were not allowed to speak out. So it's not only my mom, it's just the times kids were not heard, only seen. That didn't change, I don't think, until recently in just the structure of how families were raised, at least in our family. So hopefully, if I would have communicated I was unhappy or I thought that they were unloving and unkind, and why would you say this to me, that they would have responded positively with the feedback I needed.
So has that influenced how you raised your kids?
Yes. I'm very honest. I do not lie to my children. I try to tell them multiple times a day that I love them and why I love them. Not just because you're my kid, but because you're funny. You make my heart sing. You are just a great person. You're caring and loving and kind. And they are able to respond to me negatively or positively, how they feel about anything. I've never said, don't talk to me that way. Take that back. When they're angry with, rude. But if they're telling me something negative, I'll listen to it and I will try to fix it right then. I'm sorry. This is how I meant to say it. I did not mean it that way. I'm sorry that you took it negatively. This is what I meant. Or if it's true that I said it and I am only human, that I meant it in a negative way, I will apologize and always say I'm going to try to do better, because I wouldn't have wanted that. Nobody's perfect, even moms and dads.
Was that hard for you whenever you knew that you had to apologize to your children when you first started?
I find it easy. I find it kind of easy because we are all a work in progress. And I am, just like they can come up to me and I'll be like, that's okay. They apologize. And it's no big deal. So I know that because they love me and I love them, and hopefully they feel the same, that no matter what they do or say, that there's always going to be that, it may have been rude, but I love you. We got this. We just won't do it anymore, or I won't do it anymore.
So if you do children know that you feel unworthy? Do they know you feel inadequate?
No, I think a lot of people are surprised. I hide it kind of good.
How would you respond if it was one of them sharing with you feelings that you have about yourself?
About themselves. I would try to reassure them that it's just self-inflicted harm, because that's not how I see them, but I'm the parent, so who knows if they would listen. And to give them examples in their own life how I see that they're doing the exact opposite of whatever they think they're doing. Never being like, I don't have enough time to listen. I think that's important. Like, we have all the time in the world. This is just one little blip out of your life, even though it may be heavy right now. We've got this, and I'll help you.
What do you want people to know about people with anxiety? What should people that don't have these illnesses, they don't know, they've never experienced them, they don't have loved ones with these things, what would you want them to know about somebody with anxiety or depression?
I think it's invisible. You never know. I think that I do well with my anxiety and any depressive thoughts, but I do know people that And I never acknowledged it till here recently that I was even and have anxiety or even kind of depressive thoughts, because I've always tried to be in a good mood all the time, and that doesn't bother me. It is what it is. And for the most part, I still feel that way. Like, although I have anxiety, I now know that it's fixable. Whatever I think I'm having anxiety about, I can research it, I can do it, I can talk about it, and it's not as bad as it was when I first, I guess, the onset of whatever anxiety episode. And because other people don't know it, I don't know about other people, so it could be silent. But inside their head, they could be going 90 to nothing, and you have no idea. So be nice and kind. And if they want to talk, maybe let them. I mean, I don't know, because that helps me just talking about whatever I might consider anxiety.
Thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome.